The night my sister looked straight at me and called me the safe one. Something inside me went silent in a way I'd never heard before. Not angry, not surprised, just done. She said it in front of everyone, laughing, like my life, my choices, my years of holding things together didn't matter. They laughed with her, too. Even my mother. The kind of laugh that tells you they've already written your story without ever asking what it cost you to survive it. I remember standing there, glass in hand, feeling the weight of every time I'd swallowed my pride. Every time I'd let them believe I didn't mind being the background to their spotlight. For years, I thought keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That night, I realized silence doesn't make you noble. It just makes you invisible. So I stopped waiting for them to see me, and they have no idea what's coming next. Cold wind scraped across the cockpit glass, blending with the slow hum of the rotor still spinning down. I landed the helicopter on the San Diego base just as the sun disappeared behind the hangars. The storm that had swallowed the northern border was finally dying, leaving behind silence, debris, and 7 lives that somehow still had a pulse. I could still see their faces, the half-frozen, half-broken ones who looked at me like I wasn't real, like I was just the thing that showed up between them and the dark. I pulled off my helmet, my sleeves streaked with oil and salt. Every mission ended the same way, not with triumph, but with a strange emptiness, a stillness so clean it almost hurt, like the air after thunder stops. The phone buzzed on the console. "Don't forget Clarissa's engagement dinner next week. Please, no uniform this time. No greeting, no warmth, just instruction, polite enough to sting. As if what I wore said more about me than what I'd done. I leaned back in the seat, reading the message again until the words blurred in the reflection of the windshield. Outside, the sky had turned metallic violet, that quiet color between endings and beginnings. Funny, I thought, how people can measure your life in the things they never cared to understand. The runway lights glowed behind me as I drove away, their reflection fading in the rearview mirror. The night air smelled of fuel and rain. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Montana waited, colder than any altitude I'd ever survived. And I could feel it already, another storm forming on the horizon, one I'd have to fly through without a map. Winter light in Montana has a strange purity. Too white, too clean, as if it scrubs the warmth out of everything it touches. The road stretched for miles through the frozen pines, and each mile felt heavier than the last. By the time I turned onto my mother's street, the snow had buried the fences, and the house glowed like a stage set, new, polished, nothing like the one my father built. The air inside hit me first, lavender candles, and something synthetic underneath, a scent trying too hard to be elegant. Clarissa came running down the hallway, all perfume and practiced perfection. She hugged me tightly, camera ready even in her own living room. I let her talk. She always filled silence like she was afraid of hearing herself think. She said Nathan couldn't wait to meet me, that he'd served in Yemen, that he was a SEAL. The word landed in the air like a trophy. I smiled, polite. Then came my mother, hair fixed, pearls gleaming, the picture of control. Her eyes moved over me, the way she used to inspect my uniform before high school competitions, searching for flaws. She called me dear and told me I looked tired, asked if I was still doing those rescue things. I said I was doing what I knew best. The words fell flat between us. Dinner that night glowed under soft yellow light, all too perfect. Clarissa talked about venues, menus, and Nathan's charm. My mother nodded, every mention of stability ringing like a hymn. I caught the way her eyes drifted toward me when she said successful, as if I were the opposite of that word. When the meal ended, I stepped out to the porch. The air sliced through my lungs, sharp and clean. Moonlight burned across the snow, so bright it almost hurt to look. I whispered into the stillness, half to myself, half to the sky, that maybe my mother had been right. Some people are built for calm. I just never was. Morning brought laughter echoing through the walls, that kind of bright, echoing joy that doesn't leave room for anyone else. Clarissa was on a video call with Nathan. His face filled the tablet screen, square jaw, steady eyes, the kind of man who looked like he'd never been told no. He smiled at me politely when she turned the camera, said he'd heard I flew helicopters, that it was brave. I told him it was a job. He chuckled and said it wasn't the usual thing for women. The line cut quick and clean, but it went deep. Clarissa didn't even notice. She changed the subject, all sunshine and pride. That night, the house was full again. My mother had invited old friends, mostly retired officers and their wives. I sat through small talk until one of them asked what I did. When I said Air Force Search and Rescue, a woman laughed and asked if I taught swimming or handled the paperwork. The laughter was soft but synchronized, like they'd rehearsed it. I smiled back. Said neither. I fly people back home. The table went silent. Clarissa broke it with a laugh too loud for the room, saying I'd always been dramatic. I didn't answer, just kept eating, the sound of my fork steady against the plate. Inside me, something started to stir, a small vibration, low and familiar, like the hum of a rotor cutting through wind. Later, in my room, I watched snow falling through the window. It blanketed the ground, soft and perfect, erasing every flaw, every scar. The whole world looked peaceful, but I knew better. Snow covers everything, even the things that should never be hidden. I've never liked rooms where every laugh sounds rehearsed. That night, the whole place shimmered with the kind of perfection that makes your skin itch. Crystal glasses, jazz whispering through speakers, heels tapping across polished floors. Clarissa's engagement party looked like a photograph you'd frame to prove your life was flawless. I stood near the edge of it all, the only one not wrapped in pastel silk, a shadow against their light. My mother drifted over, her perfume sharp, her smile soft enough to sting. She told me to smile more, because people were watching. I said I was used to that, just in my world. They watch to make sure I don't fall. She nodded, not hearing the difference. The music cut, and Clarissa stepped under the chandelier with Nathan beside her. Perfect posture, perfect couple. He began to speak about his mission in Yemen, his voice steady, his tone humble in just the right way. He told them about a pilot who'd redirected his team through a sandstorm, saving their lives. A woman, unnamed. The room sighed with admiration. Clarissa's eyes shone, but his details were wrong. He said north wind. I remembered it clearly. It had shifted east. Heading 142? My hand trembled around the glass. Before I could stop myself, I spoke. It wasn't north wind. Captain. It was east. That's how you made it out. Silence. Heads turned. Nathan froze, then slowly faced me. You were there, he said. I nodded. I gave that order. He straightened, then saluted. Major Miller. The soundless moment that followed was heavier than any applause I'd ever heard. A few SEALs stood and saluted too. My mother's hand shook. Clarissa's mouth opened. No words. And then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Subject. Suspension notice. Unauthorized mission decision. Immediate effect. All that recognition, the respect, the awe, collapsed in a single vibration. I turned the screen off. Clarissa hissed. What did you do? My job. I said. My mother's voice came next, low but sharp. Couldn't you let your sister have one night? You taught me to save lives. I told her. Tonight was one of them. Then I walked out. Snow drifted beyond the glass walls, soft, quiet, uncaring. Behind me, the laughter started again, perfectly in tune, as if nothing had changed, but everything had. The message in the storm. Snow thickened as I drove away from the lodge, headlights carving tunnels through white air. My phone buzzed again. Clarissa's embarrassed. You always ruin things. I didn't reply. Wind lashed against the windshield like a voice that wouldn't stop shouting. Static filled the radio, and in it I almost heard myself again. Proceed 142. That night in Yemen replayed like a fever dream. The storm, the heat, the impossible call. I had saved them. Now it was a crime. The phone rang again. Nathan. I ignored it twice before answering. His voice came fast, raw. They're saying you disobeyed command. It's not true. My father's behind it. Of course he was. Rear Admiral Thornton. The storm's source had a name. I hung up and sat in the dark, engine humming, breath fogging the glass. Outside, the snow was blinding. Inside, I typed a note to myself. Storm coming. This one's man-made. Then I drove into it, not slowing, not looking back. The road vanished under white, and for the first time all night, I felt steady, like before every mission, when fear fades, and flight begins. 3 days after the engagement, the official order came in. Return to base for inquiry. The sky over San Diego was bright, too clear, the kind of blue that made everything look unreal. When I stepped off the transport, 3 officers were waiting. No salute, no words of respect, just a sealed envelope and the weight of their stares. By order of Rear Admiral Thornton, my command was suspended pending investigation. I signed the papers without a word. In the military, silence can be the only thing you own. By nightfall, the story was everywhere. Air Force Major under review for reckless decision during Yemen operation. My inbox filled with sympathy and speculation. Are you okay? What happened? And from my mother. Couldn't you wait until after the wedding to start this drama? I read it once, then deleted it. At the base, Colonel Evans was waiting in a quiet conference room, his silver hair glinting under fluorescent light. He told me they were turning me into a lesson, not a criminal. That's how command covers its mistakes. I told him I'd be the storm they couldn't predict. He smiled, sad and proud all at once. Then he handed me a folder. Inside were radar logs. My order to change heading confirmed before transmission failed. The signature afterward had been replaced. By the Admiral's office, he said. I walked out into the corridor, the lights bleaching everything sterile. 2 young soldiers stood by the vending machine, whispering. One said I was the reckless one from Yemen. The other called it a shame. I kept walking. I'd saved men like them once. Now I was the stain on their uniform. That night, my phone rang from an unknown number, a man's voice, low, metallic. Walk away, Major. Let it fade. Stay, and you'll lose your wings. I asked who it was. He said someone who knows when to stop flying. I told him then he didn't know me, and hung up. Afterward, I opened my logbook and wrote one line. Every flight has turbulence, but only storms test the wings. Tomorrow, Washington. They wanted to see me fall apart in person. I wanted them to look me in the eye while they did it. Washington was colder than I remembered. Gray steel skies mirrored in the Pentagon's glass windows. My footsteps echoed through its endless hallways. Evans met me outside the briefing room, handed me a thin envelope. Inside was the original transmission. He said, "Keep it close. They'll call it forged. Then let them prove it." He told me. When the doors closed, Thornton was already there, sitting at the head of the table, medals gleaming like armor, 2 generals beside him, a clerk typing every word. "Major Miller," he began. "You changed heading without clearance. $6 million in federal loss. Do you admit it?" "No, sir. The wind shifted southeast at 2017. My decision saved 6 men. We have no record of your clearance, because someone replaced it." Thornton leaned back, expression unreadable. "That's a serious accusation. So is falsifying evidence." The room froze. Another officer cleared his throat and asked who could confirm my version. "Captain Nathan Cole." I said. He was there. The name landed like shrapnel. Thornton's jaw tightened. "My son's loyalty won't be used against me." "Then let him choose what loyalty means," I said. The session was adjourned for a recess. I stepped into the corridor and found Nathan waiting, eyes tired, shoulders tense. "You knew he was my father," he said. I guessed. "He'll destroy you. He's already trying." He told me he'd asked to testify and been denied. Then testify outside. I told him. That night in my hotel, the wind hammered the window, a rhythm too familiar to mistake. I opened my laptop, pressed play on the recording Evans had given me. Thornton's voice filled the room, clear through static. Proceed 142. Confirmed. I listened again and again. His voice, mine, and between them, the sound of the storm. Tomorrow, it wouldn't be just wind or noise. It would be war. And this time, I wasn't the one under command. Morning in Washington felt like steel. Cold. Silent. Unyielding. I buttoned my uniform, lined each ribbon until it looked like I had control over something. In the mirror, the blue fabric shimmered like the sky before a storm. The Pentagon's hearing room was too bright to hide in. 6 officers sat across from me. In the middle, Rear Admiral Thornton, the man who built the storm, now sitting in judgment. He read the charges with surgical calm. I said I understood, but I also understood wind direction, and that was what saved his men. He motioned for the recording. Static. Rotor noise. My voice. Request heading change to 142. Silence. No confirmation. Thornton smiled thinly. I slid Evan's USB across the table. The room filled with new sound, his voice, through the wind. Proceed 142. Confirmed. Silence again, this time heavier. A young officer whispered, "That's you." "Sir." Thornton froze. The door opened. Nathan stepped in, drenched from rain. "Major Miller's call saved us all," he said. "My father approved it." I heard him. A general tapped his pen. "Evidence stands." When I walked out, the air felt colder, cleaner. A reporter asked how it felt to be right, like breathing after a long dive. I said, "You're alive, but it still hurts." The headlines spread faster than the truth ever had. Admiral suspended after false report. Hero pilot cleared of charges. They called me a hero, but all I felt was the weight of exhaustion settling into my bones. That afternoon, I sat alone in a small cafe overlooking the Potomac. The sun hung low, pale light glinting off the water like scratched metal. My phone buzzed. Colonel Evans. He said I'd done it. I told him I hadn't done anything. I just survived another storm. He said that's what doing it means. I ended the call and watched the ripples drift downstream. Across the street, a group of young officers laughed loud enough to fill the air. I used to sound like that, sure that justice lived in the seams of a uniform. Now I knew better. Justice only lives in those who can stand alone. That night, an email came from my mother. "Come home if you can. Clarissa's hurting. We all are. No apology, no pride. Just the first crack in their certainty." I closed the laptop. Rain streaked the window, headlights bleeding across the glass. Being right doesn't heal you. It only stops the bleeding. The road back to Montana stretched empty and clean, the snow melting into mist, the air thick with pine and damp earth. The lake house still glowed in the distance, but the laughter that once lived there was gone. My mother sat on the porch, hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea. When I stepped closer, she looked up, her eyes trembling. "We didn't know," she said. I told her she didn't want to. Clarissa appeared in the doorway, her eyes red and raw. "I told everyone about you," she said softly. "They needed to know who you are." I smiled. "You don't have to fix it," I said. "Just stop pretending I needed fixing." Nathan came forward and handed me a thick envelope. "From SEAL Command, recognition for valor." I glanced at it, folded it closed. "Paper can record it," I said. "Peace doesn't need paperwork." My mother reached for my hand. "Can you forgive me?" "You don't need forgiveness," I said. "Just stop making me smaller so others can feel bigger." We sat in silence, the lake whispering against the shore. At sunrise, I stood by the plane, golden light spilling across the wings. I wrote one last line in my flight log. Some storms never leave the sky, but you learn to fly through them anyway. Then I lifted off into quiet air. No applause, no audience, just peace.